Welcome to this very special episode of The Rest is Entertainment concerning
The Traitors. And it's what you're refusing to call an emergency podcast, but I'm very excited to call an emergency podcast.
It'll be a cold day in hell before I ever use the term emergency podcast, which seems to me one of the most autoparodic terms of our time. It is a special edition. You can call it an emergency podcast if you wish, Richard, about The Traitors.
So Wednesday evening, episode 10 drops. We've got 3 episodes to go. So if you have not watched the first 9, do not listen. Stop listening right now because we're going to be talking about all our favourite bits. We're going to talk about who we think is going to win. So stop listening if you haven't seen the first 9. Come back to us when you've seen them. But if you have watched the first 9 and you're excited for this evening,
come sit by us because we've got plenty to say.
So we have 8 players remaining.
And then there were 8, Richard.
And then there were 8.
Yes. Paul has gone, and the bigger they come, the harder they fall. I was waiting for that one. I wasn't a huge fan of Paul,
Really?
and I had to ask myself, primarily I knew how he'd behave at a barbecue.
Okay.
I could just picture it. And there was something, I had to interrogate myself on this because you're thinking, why when someone is playing the game, as basically it is a game, it's a game of scheming and it's a game of double crossing, I think he just became too big. He became too big for it. He played it too big.
He became bigger than the club.
He became bigger than the club. It was time to sell him to Real Madrid, and he was too big. And actually, this is why you knew he was going to go, because he was. And I worry, is this happening to Harry now?
I was going to say the exact same thing. Has Harry done a Paul?
He's become a sort of 22-year-old Scarface, but I can't, we know how the movie ends, you see. So maybe he'll rein it back in. But if he carries on the trajectory that he was in for most of 9, of just really giving too much information, really getting into that role of master manipulator, I fear that he's not so long for this Scottish castle world.
I think it's exactly right. I think it may have gone to his head a tiny bit, as it would. The thing that really got to him, there's a brilliant bit, he's talking to the diary room in one of the episodes, when Paul went and everyone just said, oh my God, that's like the greatest traitor of all time. That guy is a genius. And Harry's going, what about me?
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm the genius.
Yes. Also, there were still 8 people left in the show. So if that's the greatest traitor of all time, then having said all that, something I said when we did the sort of preview of the whole series before it came out, when these shows work really best, they kind of cleave to those narrative tropes of fiction. And Harry has had a glow up because let's face it, at the start you thought he doesn't seem the brightest, and I'm not quite sure how he's going to play this. And what's happened is it's like a movie where an ordinary person is thrust into extraordinary circumstances and has to step up to the challenge and survive. So he has kind of become that. But as I say, I slightly worry he's become Tony Montana. And I know how the movie ends. But, he might realise this and try and rein it in and go back to appearing quite silly and stupid. Yeah,
it got a little bit Succession when Harry and Paul... So I keep thinking of Harry Enfield and Paul Whitehouse when I say Harry and Paul. Yeah. But anyway, when... they would keep voting out the third member of the group, and then not only then recruiting someone that they thought was a patsy they could get rid of, but essentially telling them that when they got into the turret, just say, oh, the thing with Miles is we only got him because we thought we could get rid of him, and like Andrew going, oh, but me, you think I'm great.
Paul was the Bond villain who has to tell you his plan just before he's quite managed to kill you. Now, Andrew is quite good as a traitor, even though I think Andrew's been a bit of a useless player throughout. He is in the strongest position in some ways because he's been recruited so late as a traitor. We've said that before, that's one of the strongest positions in the game. He also doesn't like doing it. Being conflicted and not being like Harry now, who's like, I love killing people, same as Paul was. Being conflicted helps you. You are much more credible as someone who could be fit. And clearly he obviously was a faithful sometime. But you're much more, if you're conflicted, you're strong.
He just started in that last episode slightly getting into it, slightly going, I'm quite enjoying this. But he's probably, we're near enough to the end now that it won't turn into megalomania, which is always, it's like Blair or Thatcher. If you're in power for too long, you
go mad.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, you should only be a traitor for so long. About 3 episodes is about
limited terms on traitors.
Exactly. So Andrew, I think, is great, and I think is completely under the radar. Now, the brilliant thing. So at the end of episode 9, you have the thing of them deciding to seduce someone and murder someone.
Yeah.
And Harry did that thing, which I think is clever, about having the badge, so he could say, "Well, they tried to murder me." I suspect it might backfire because sometimes when things are too complicated, people don't understand them and they go for the much simpler version of what it is. So he had the shield and they recruit Ross.
I mean, Ross, let's face it, is the worst player in the game. He's been the worst player in the game. Bless him. He's been loudly wrong on almost everything.
And yet here he is. It's almost like that's the way to win, isn't it? But as I was watching,
I can't think that Ross. Can you think that Ross would be surviving?
Yeah.
You think he'll go on?
I think he could do.
Well, I tell you what. Sorry, I'm interrupting you because this is annoying. But there've been quite a few interviews over this weekend and the last week with the winners of the first season of Traitors.
Yeah.
Saying, you know, how do you win? Now, let me explain. Those guys fluked their way to the prize pot. They were not the brightest. And honestly, Meryl says things like, just be yourself and have fun. So if that's the strategy, and maybe she thinks that was her strategy, but she fluked her way to that prize pot.
Yes, it's interesting that she still imagines that she was that there was some tactical awareness.
Yeah.
But Ross, when I was watching the end of episode 9 and they said, oh, we're going to seduce. And then you're used to how that show is edited, and you go, "Oh, there's going to be between the two of them, and we're going to find out who it is in the start of the next episode." But then they said, "Oh, it's going to be Ross." Something. Oh, so actually, what the end of this is going to be is Ross going, "I don't know whether to do it. Should I do it or should I not do it?" And so they go to Ross, and he's looking at the thing, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." And I was thinking, right, what is the end of? What is your cliffhanger? And of course, the cliffhanger is him going into that turret, saying to the two of them, I'd be really interested about why you voted certain people out. Saying, going, anyone in specific? Let me think, anyone. Diane?
Yeah.
Why did you do it? And Harry just going, it's too clever, mate, it's just had to go. And then him just going back and just going, right, they killed my mum.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that is, what other reality show do you get that on?
Well, speaking of, a player that I think is quite interesting, I'd like to hear your thoughts on. Okay, Zach, he was kind of a savant at the start because he's slightly sort of, he sort of tries to be satirical, erratic, a bit shit-stirring, but he did have an intuition really early on in the series that Diane was someone's mum, and he thought it was Paul's mum because they both had red hair, and he was wrong about that. But that was an unbelievable shout. He called Paul first. There's a lot of people. He's really good, but I feel that, and it protects him that people think he's silly and erratic and therefore couldn't be a traitor. But do you think he can go all the way to the final?
Yeah, I'm fascinated that he and Jazz are still there because they're exactly the sort of people who would normally get voted out or be recruited. Zach must be thinking, how am I still in this game and have not been recruited as a traitor at the moment? What is it that I'm doing wrong? Because as you say, I think he's playing fairly well. By the way, I was talking to someone on the team, and they're saying that obviously they had to keep secret, even the production office, that Diane and Ross were mother and son, and because it was Diane and Ross, their code name was the Supremes. Which is great. And also,
I love knowing this.
By the way, the single best delivered line, one of the best delivered lines in reality TV show history was Diane going, well, of course Paul is not my son, but Ross is.
That was what a marmalade dropper. Yes, well done, Diane.
And then, you know, to have her in a coffin with her son dropping a rose.
That was one of the campest things I've ever seen on television. I mean, black roses being cast by the son onto the mother. I just stick a fork in me, I'm done.
Paul pretending to shake.
God.
See, sorry, can I go back to Paul for 1 minute?
Yeah.
Which is, I get what you're saying, but as a producer, you're thinking, thank God.
Yeah.
The whole history of reality TV shows is people reminding each other it's just a game. It's just a game. It's just a game. And people at home going, oh my God, they're so obsessed. It's just a game. Now, and as you say, when someone actually goes, okay, I'm just going to play it as just a game, people go furious because they go, oh no, but it's not just a game though, Paul. It's other human beings.
Yeah.
So I love.
You're playing with people's lives here, Paul.
I love Paul. His parting shot. He didn't do too much wrong, but his parting shot where he said, perhaps Harry's learned a bit from me. I think. I don't know about that, mate.
I don't know about that.
I don't know if he did.
Yeah, he wasn't held back by self-doubt, was he? He wasn't. If only what he could have achieved if he hadn't been.
So we're going to find a winner or winners.
Yeah.
Very
yes.
soon.
Can I also? I think I have to comment on the fact, which I thought Claudia commented rather tartly on it, that when they were given the chance to recruit again, oh my, you're going to recruit another guy,
another man.
The only female traitor in that game was Ash, who had Claudia's hand on her shoulder, and that's it. it was almost as though they couldn't see. They said, "Oh, we'll get Miles. He's a really strong player." No, he's not. When they decided to recruit him, I feel like that 50% of the cast are not on their radar, and I can tell you which 50%. So yes, perhaps maybe we'll see one recruited before the end. But
yes, it's fascinating that. But interestingly, their tactic was, I mean, not for Mars, but for the others. Let's get people who aren't very good, and so they started picking off the men. So maybe it's actually a very, very clever comment on the world we live in, that the most hopeless people in any room are men, and the most disposable people are men. No, but it's fascinating, that, isn't it? It's a real sausage fest up in the turret, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. But
it's like an Australian barbecue up there.
And I tell you, I knew how Paul would behave. Now, can I speak to you as Dorothy coming to the wizard of formats?
Okay.
At the start of this, you said there are quite a lot of flaws in this format.
Yes.
I feel that this second season has exposed even more significant flaws in the format. Do you share my views on this?
Yeah, I do. Well, the fascinating thing is how well it works, despite the fact that the format doesn't work.
I agree.
So the format, if you play this game at home, which you can easily do, Wink Murder, all that stuff, and you get rid of the 3 traitors. Great, let's all have a drink. That's the end of the game, which cannot happen here because there's 12 episodes. There's 12 episodes have been funded and 12 episodes have been scheduled. So it is going to go for 12 episodes. Now, that means, of course, that anytime a traitor is got rid of, they get replaced instantly. And so the big issue is that thing in the first few shows, and people saying, we have to get a traitor. Guys, it's so incredibly important we get a traitor now. The numbers are starting to really work against us. Now, that doesn't matter. You do not need to get it. All you need to do is stay in. That's all you need to do. You do not need to get rid of any traitors. In fact, it's useful for you not to get rid of traitors. What you should really be doing in those early days is getting rid of some of the more sort of easily persuadable members of the faithful.
And building social capital yourself.
And building social capital. That's what you should be doing. Now, that's a big flaw at the heart of this show.
Yeah.
And yet, I got to say this.
And it's not fixable, basically.
It is completely not fixable. And yet this is one of the greatest reality shows of all time.
I couldn't agree more.
So go figure. And this series has been brilliant. And I think I said, look, this show is as good or bad as its producers. And it's been brilliantly produced, this series. The coffin day where someone had been murdered, and you had the whole, it's just beautifully done. Some of the little twists and turns.
I tell you what I love, and what I didn't realise they did, because one of my children alerted me to this, which is what I've always wanted them to do is because we loved seeing that they're wrong every night, and that's what I said on an earlier discussion of this, which is very confident people being shown they're completely wrong about things is a really engaging watch. I'd love to see them find out who the traitors are once they're off. Now, that actually does happen on The Traitors Uncloaked. Yeah. So this weekend, I caught up on watching quite a few people find out who the actual traitors were. Of course, they can't believe Paul. They just can't believe it. It's really amazing that people don't, when they keep getting it wrong night after night, think, why don't I just go for do the opposite day? Yeah. Just do the opposite. Isn't there a Seinfeld episode where George Costanza just does the opposite because he's failing so badly at everything? He just thinks, I'm just going to do the absolute opposite of what I'm supposed to do.
I'm just going to vote for Molly.
Yeah, I'm well, everyone's saying the one person it can't be is Paul. Just maybe just have a night of floating out there and saying, I'm going to vote for you.
But if I was sitting at that round table, there's definitely an argument to say, look, we're sort of coin tossing here. We're all agreed. In fact, slightly worse than coin tossing, because we're less than 50%. Let's all just vote for Molly. Really early on. Just go, look, absolutely nothing against her, but we might as well.
The herd behaviour is another sort of element. It's arguably a bit of a flaw in it, that the herd behaviour is getting in the slipstream of more vocal people and just saying, I've gone along with that, is incredibly tempting, and it results in in the first season that didn't happen so much because, as always, you've got the newly fallen snow of a first season, and you can make of it what you will. Once people have seen a season themselves and then they become contestants in the next season, they've got a whole load of views about how they're going to do things.
But again, they can't, because they're in a castle with loads of people and loads of cameras everywhere, and they're completely cut off from their normal life.
Sleep deprived.
They're sleep deprived. They're in an insane environment, and so everybody reverts to the mean. Everybody, because they can't help it, because it's such an alien environment, and that's why the show works. Now, 8 people left. Yeah, I mean, who's going to win? I mean, it looked it looks a lot like Jasmine might be out in the next round table. That's
I thought Ross
where
might be, but who knows? Yes, okay, maybe I'm wrong.
It'd be interesting if Ross. You're so anti-Ross.
I'm not. Well, I just don't know. I think that they'll turn on him immediately, and I think that people think that he's been very vocal, and also there's an element where people in the faithful group wish to punish people who keep getting it wrong and have been very vocal at the table about it because they think they've been deflecting or something like that. So I slightly feel that he might go next, but maybe I'm completely wrong about that. I'm sure you are far better at these things than me. So probably...
oh my God, no, it's impossible. I mean, I think we can both agree that Evie and Molly are going nowhere.
No, I mean, they may fluke their way to the prize pot. In other editions of the shows, the US first season and the Australian one, it's not, again, we've got spoilers in this and we have told people this, where the traitors win or a traitor wins. The first UK one is the only one where where people who are faithful, which is a harder position to win from.
Yeah.
But this one could be going that way, I think. I'd like to think Harry will win it because I just love that glow up thing, and I love people stepping up and become, I like it being like a 3-act movie. Yeah. So I'd like to think it. I have to say I think that's a bit of a fantasy now, but I'd like to be wrong.
Yeah, it would be fun for Harry to win after what he's done. I feel like Andrew is he might be in a stronger position than Harry. Harry's brought, I think, too much heat on himself now by being this seer
being the
who
big
doesn't get murdered.
Yeah.
It really depends on whether this shield thing pays off. That they say, well, they tried to murder me. It just feels like when you've got Zach and, Jazz there who are suspicious of everything.
Now, Jazz is an interesting player.
Yeah.
I think he's brave and he's right about lots of things, but I suppose he could go on through, but he doesn't have the social game. Somebody described him the other day. What did they say? They said he has no persuasion. Maybe one of the traitors in the tower said that in the turret said he has no persuasion. He is often right about things, but is not a persuasive advocate for those positions.
Yeah, which is why he's still there. If I was honestly in the game now, you have to wonder why you're still in the game. If you're a faithful, you have to wonder why you're still in the game, and there's always a reason. I think that. God, it's going to be genuinely fascinating. So there's 3 traitors, there's 5 faithfuls. If Jasmine does go in the round table and then they murder, we're down to 3 and 3, which is a point where it's almost impossible for the traitors to lose unless they absolutely, fall in on themselves, which they may well do because Harry, is essentially the king.
Because he's now the kingpin, he will turn on the others.
Yeah, and because Ross' mother was killed by Harry. This is great. Shakespeare would absolutely love this series of the traitors. You've got to figure that a Molly or an Evie are going to be in that last 3. Yeah, so I wonder if it's a final 3 of Andrew, one of Molly and Evie, and one of Zach and Jazz. And then it's just a question of can Andrew hold his nerve. None of this will happen, by the way. But
I don't feel I'm not sure he's got what it takes to hold his nerve.
I think it's one of those things. Have you ever seen the wonderful speed skating final at the Winter Olympics?
I have seen speed skating finals.
where there's an Australian guy who's got to the final and he's up against the 3 best speed skaters in the world, and he's sort of half a lap behind all of them. And then right on the last corner of the last bend, all 3 of them take each other out. And this Australian just sort of sails through and wins the gold medal in speed skating. And I feel like that might be Andrew.
Okay. Thank you so much for tuning into this non-emergency but very special podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning into the emergency podcast. It is greatly... I know Marina is very happy you've listened to the emergency podcast. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, the new traitors. And we'll talk about how... You didn't predict who was going to win.
Oh, God, I agreed with you. I thought it would be someone like that, but I want it to be Harry. You see, I get too invested in the characters, and I want it to be, but I feel it's all gone wrong. But I want it to be him.
You want it to be him. Yeah, we'll see how wrong we were next Tuesday.
I will definitely be wrong.
And don't forget, we've got a Q&A episode coming out on Thursday, and then back for the regular show next Tuesday. See you then.
See you then.